During the age of the Roman Republic, countless men tried to carve their names into history. Some were remembered as brilliant commanders, others for cruelty or cowardice, but one name refused to fade. Century after century, it still echoes: Julius Caesar. Gaius Julius Caesar was born on July 13, 100 BC, into a respected but not particularly powerful Roman family. From a young age, he showed signs of restlessness and ambition. He was energetic, curious, and drawn to danger. But at just 16, his life changed abruptly. His father died suddenly, and Julius became the head of his household far earlier than expected. Caesar was closely tied to power through family connections. His uncle by marriage was Gaius Marius, one of Rome's most famous generals, a man celebrated for reshaping the Roman legions and for inspiring fierce loyalty among his soldiers. Marius became a living example for the young Caesar, proof that greatness could be forged through ambition, charisma, and military success. But Rome was entering a violent period. Marius became locked in a brutal civil war against his rival Lucius Cornelius Sulla, a conflict that would tear the Republic apart. During this chaos, Caesar married Cornelia, the daughter of one of Marius's political allies, and together they had a daughter named Julia. When Marius died and Sulla emerged victorious, Rome fell under the control of a dictator with near absolute power. Although Caesar had not fought against Sulla directly, his family ties made him dangerous in the dictator's eyes. Refusing to divorce Cornelia when ordered to do so, Caesar became a marked man. With little choice and his life under threat, he fled Rome and enlisted in the army, serving in distant provinces in Asia Minor. Caesar quickly distinguished himself in combat, earning the civic crown for saving a fellow Roman's life, one of the highest military honors. His bravery and leadership impressed both officers and veterans, marking him as a man destined for command. In 78 BC, news reached him that Sulla was dead. For Caesar, this was freedom. He returned to Rome, only to discover that much of his family's property had been confiscated under Sulla's rule. Stripped of wealth but not ambition, Caesar reinvented himself. He used his powerful voice and sharp intellect to become a lawyer, gaining fame as a ruthless prosecutor and gifted orator. Through sheer effort, he restored his family's social standing. Around the age of 25, Caesar set sail across the Aegean Sea. The journey would become legendary. His ship was attacked by pirates, the crew overpowered, and the survivors taken hostage. When the pirates realized Caesar came from a wealthy family, they demanded a ransom. Instead of begging, Caesar laughed at them. He told them their demand was too low and insisted they ask for more, warning them calmly that once freed, he would return to hunt them down. The pirates mocked him, amused by his arrogance, but after the ransom was paid and Caesar released, he did exactly what he promised. Using his remaining fortune and persuasive skills, he raised a small fleet, hunted the pirates across the sea, defeated them, and had the survivors crucified. His reputation grew. By the time he returned to Rome, his name was already being whispered with admiration and fear. Caesar was soon called back into military service, where he once again distinguished himself and earned the rank of military tribune, granting him authority, influence, and a path into politics. In 69 BC, he returned to Rome and formally entered public life as a member of the Senate. That same year, tragedy struck again. Cornelia, pregnant with their second child, died during childbirth, taking the baby with her. Caesar was devastated, but grief never slowed his ambition. Shortly after, he was sent to govern Roman territories in Spain. One day, while visiting the city of Cadiz, Caesar encountered a worn statue of Alexander the Great. Standing before it, Caesar broke down. Alexander had conquered much of the known world before the age of 30, Caesar was 33 and felt he had achieved nothing of equal greatness. That moment planted a fire in him. From that day forward, Caesar would no longer accept mediocrity. He would chase greatness at any cost.
Alexander the Great, at that age, had already conquered an empire. Standing before that statue, Caesar swore he would not rest until he matched Alexander in greatness. Julius Caesar completed his duties in Spain, where he earned a reputation as a capable governor and crushed several local tribes that had risen against Roman rule. But Caesar was never content to remain far from Rome. Power lived there, and that was where he belonged. After finishing his service, he returned home and immediately focused on advancing his political career. His next goal was Pontifex Maximus, the highest priesthood in Roman religion. Two respected senators were also competing for the position. To win, Caesar spent nearly his entire personal fortune. He knew failure would destroy him politically and financially. Desperate to secure victory, Caesar allied himself with Marcus Licinius Crassus, the wealthiest man in Rome. Crassus paid off half of Caesar's enormous debt and guaranteed the rest. It was a decisive move. Caesar won the election and achieved the position he wanted, but at the cost of owing everything to Crassus. His rise did not go unnoticed. General Pompey was one of the most powerful men in Rome, admired and feared by the Senate. He disliked Caesar's growing ambition and began watching him closely. In 60 BC, Caesar was elected consul, the highest office in the Roman Republic. As consul, he wielded enormous authority and enjoyed legal immunity while in office. That same year, Caesar married Calpurnia, who would remain his wife until his death. Tensions grew between Pompey, Caesar, and Crassus, threatening open conflict. To prevent disaster, Caesar arranged a meeting between the three men. From that meeting emerged a powerful alliance, later known as the First Triumvirate. Together, they controlled Rome. Pompey strengthened security in the city by placing loyal soldiers in the streets. Crassus expanded his wealth through naval trade and foreign markets. Caesar received military command and the opportunity he had been waiting for. His fortune once again seemed destined for greatness. Yet Caesar had not forgotten the moment at the statue of Alexander. That ambition still burned inside him. To rival Alexander, he needed conquest. New lands meant plunder, taxes, and glory. His attention turned to Gaul. Gaul was a vast region covering modern France, Belgium, and parts of Italy and Germany. It was rugged, forested, and inhabited by fiercely independent Celtic tribes. Conquering Gaul would not be easy. In April 58 BC, Caesar marched north at the head of 4 legions, numbering around 24,000 men. He knew that a direct invasion would be disastrous. Gaul was fragmented into rival tribes, constantly at war with one another. Caesar exploited this division. He sent envoys to tribal leaders, offering Roman military support in exchange for alliance, food supplies, and permission to enter their lands. Several tribes accepted. With alliances secured, Caesar crossed into Gaul. The stage was set for a war that would define his legacy and reshape the ancient world. The first major clash took place at the Battle of Bibracte, where the Romans faced a far larger enemy force. The Gauls belonged to the Helvetii tribe, who were migrating through Gaul, attacking other tribes and leaving destruction behind them. Julius Caesar positioned part of his legions on the top of a hill, securing a strong defensive advantage. The remaining legions were hidden behind another hill, concealed by dense trees. The Romans managed to halt the initial Gaul advance. What followed was a brutal struggle that lasted almost the entire day. At the decisive moment, Caesar ordered the hidden legions to strike the rear of the Gaul army. The Gauls resisted fiercely, but discipline and coordination defeated sheer numbers. The Helvetii surrendered.
Caesar spared many of them on the condition that they return to their lands and cultivate crops to supply the Roman army. Others were taken as prisoners and sent to Rome to be sold as slaves. This victory marked the beginning of Caesar's dominance in Gaul. Soon after, he defeated the Germanic Suebi tribe, securing another major success. In the years that followed, Caesar pushed deeper into Gaul, forming alliances when possible and destroying cities when resistance was unavoidable. The Gauls did not accept Roman rule quietly. Rebellions erupted and were crushed one by one. By 55 BC, Gaul was almost entirely under Caesar's control. He had accumulated enough wealth to repay his debt to Crassus and secure his future. His term of command was nearing its end, and soon he would have to return to Rome. But fate intervened. One of his legions stationed in northern Gaul spotted a distant land across the sea. It was Britain. Caesar knew of the island from ancient Greek writings, and once again ambition consumed him. He wanted to go where no Roman commander had gone before. To cross the sea, he needed ships and time. Caesar ordered vessels to be built, but the process was slow. Impatient, he decided to take a risk. Only part of his force would cross first to establish a...
He underestimated the dangers of the sea. Violent storms smashed Roman ships against the rocks. The few survivors who reached shore were attacked by British war chariots and forced to retreat. The setback did not break Caesar's resolve. After securing political support in Rome, he returned in 54 BC with a stronger force. He established a fortified base near the coast and spent more than a year fighting and subduing local tribes. The campaign enhanced his fame, but also increased fear among Roman senators. While Caesar was away, new danger rose in Gaul. Tribal leaders began calling for unity against Rome. Caesar understood the threat. A united Gaul would be nearly impossible to defeat. One leader stood above the rest, Vercingetorix of the Arverni tribe. He united many tribes and attacked Roman garrisons across Gaul. When Caesar returned, Vercingetorix avoided direct battle and scorched the land behind him, burning villages and crops to starve the Romans. The strategy nearly worked. Caesar's soldiers weakened from hunger and exhaustion. Caesar responded with diplomacy and intimidation, turning undecided tribes against Vercingetorix and securing food supplies. The pursuit continued with several violent clashes. Caesar often dismounted and fought beside his men at the front lines. The legions adored him, and many fought fiercely to protect their commander. Eventually, Vercingetorix withdrew to the fortified city of Alesia, built atop a hill. The siege of Alesia would become legendary. Caesar knew a direct assault would be disastrous. Instead, he chose starvation, but time was against him. A massive Gaul relief army was approaching. Caesar made a bold decision. He ordered the construction of two massive wooden walls around the city. One trapped the defenders inside, the other faced outward to stop the approaching army. The strategy would decide the fate of Gaul and the future of Rome. The strategy was successful. When the massive Gaul relief army arrived, the Roman legions proved once again that discipline could defeat overwhelming numbers. After witnessing this crushing defeat, Vercingetorix accepted the inevitable. On a historic day, he dressed in full armor, mounted his horse, and rode alone into the Roman camp. He dismounted, stood before Julius Caesar, and without a single word, threw his weapons to the ground as a symbol of Gaul's surrender. With the conquest of Gaul, Caesar achieved everything he had dreamed of. His name inspired admiration and fear throughout Rome. His wealth was immense. He was ready to return home in triumph. Julius Caesar had conquered Gaul, and even the distant tribes of Britain had bowed before Roman power. Many years had passed since he had left Rome, and he longed to return. But Rome had changed during his absence. One of his most important allies, Marcus Crassus, had suffered a catastrophic defeat at the Battle of Carrhae against the Parthian Empire. Crassus was a brilliant financier and negotiator, but no great general. He perished in that battle, and with his death, the triumvirate collapsed.
Without Crassus, Pompey gained full political control of Rome. The rising fame and wealth of Julius Caesar deeply unsettled Pompey, who had always resented him. With Crassus gone, Pompey no longer felt the need to tolerate Caesar. He accused Caesar of illegally extending his command in Gaul beyond its original term. Caesar Pompey knew this accusation was dishonest, since he himself had agreed to extend Caesar's command. But truth no longer mattered. Pompey also claimed Caesar had used his legions for personal gain. The Senate, now under Pompey's influence, ordered Caesar to disband his army and return to Rome to stand trial. Caesar understood the meaning of this order. Obedience meant ruin or death. Defiance meant war. He chose defiance. In 49 BC, Julius Caesar and his legions were declared enemies of the state. Civil war had begun. Caesar was not surprised. He knew confrontation with Pompey was inevitable. But the choice before him was tragic. To return home, he would have to march against Rome itself. Pompey understood that Rome could not withstand the hardened legions of Gaul. He needed time. He called legions back from Greece and the eastern provinces. A race began. Caesar marched south at incredible speed, while Pompey waited for reinforcements. One final obstacle remained. The Rubicon River marked the boundary no Roman general was allowed to cross with an army. Caesar knew that crossing meant there was no return. According to tradition, he spoke the words, "The die is cast," and led his men across. Time was critical. Caesar advanced with only one legion, while the others followed behind at a slower pace. His gamble worked. Pompey abandoned Rome and fled south to Brundisium, where he crossed to Greece to regroup. When Caesar entered Rome, he found a silent city. The people feared what he would do. But Caesar forbade looting or violence. He addressed the population calmly and promised stability. He placed Mark Antony in charge of the city and began restoring order. New laws were passed, finances were stabilized, and new officials were appointed. While waiting for ships to be built, Caesar marched to Spain, where he defeated Pompey's supporters and secured the western provinces. In 48 BC, Caesar crossed into Greece and finally confronted Pompey. Their first major clash occurred near Dyrrhachium. Pompey commanded a vast force of infantry and cavalry. Caesar was outnumbered and underprepared. Pompey struck a weak point in Caesar's defenses. Panic spread. Caesar was forced to retreat. It was a rare and painful defeat, one that reminded Julius Caesar that the war for Rome was far from over. Pompey the Great was one of the finest generals of his age, and he could never be underestimated. After his victory, Pompey had shown caution, but Caesar was forced to retreat to a new camp with little food and almost no fresh water. His men were exhausted, and supplies were running out. Caesar knew he had to act quickly or face destruction. On August 9, 48 BC, the Battle of Pharsalus took place in the plains of Thessaly. The battle began slowly, with both commanders carefully observing each other. Two Roman armies trained with the same tactics and formations could not be defeated easily. When the fighting began, it was fierce and chaotic. Both sides attempted to outflank one another. Pompey held a strong advantage in cavalry, but Caesar's veterans had endured every hardship imaginable and refused to break. Despite being heavily outnumbered, Caesar's legions resisted the cavalry and then struck the enemy infantry from the side. The tide of battle turned completely. Pompey watched his army collapse and realized he was not facing an ordinary opponent. He fled the battlefield in defeat. After Pharsalus, Pompey found himself desperate and alone. Senators who had followed him now fled to other Roman territories. Some even went to Caesar to beg forgiveness. Pompey escaped to Egypt, which was under Roman influence, and hoped to find refuge among the Egyptian elite. He did not expect betrayal. Egyptian leaders feared Caesar's wrath and believed killing Pompey would earn favor. When Pompey stepped ashore, he was murdered. A great Roman general died far from home. When Caesar arrived in Egypt, he was received by King Ptolemy XIII. When Caesar asked about Pompey, only the remains of his former rival were presented to him. Caesar was furious. He had planned to pardon Pompey and bring him back to Rome with honor. The murder of a Roman consul by foreigners was an insult to Rome itself. While in Egypt, Caesar became entangled in local politics. Egypt was in the middle of a civil war. Cleopatra sought the throne from her younger brother Ptolemy. Knowing Caesar disliked her brother, Cleopatra devised a daring plan to meet him. She secretly entered Caesar's chambers and explained her cause. Their meeting became legendary, and many claim they became lovers that very night. Caesar supported Cleopatra and used Roman military power to secure her rule. Fighting erupted in Alexandria in what became known as the Siege of Alexandria. In 47 BC, the conflict reached its climax at the Battle of the Nile. Naval combat filled the river. During the chaos, Caesar's ship capsized, and he was forced to swim to shore to save his life. Ptolemy was not so fortunate and drowned in the Nile. Cleopatra emerged victorious and took the throne of Egypt. Caesar had achieved total dominance. In Rome, he was appointed dictator, the highest authority in the Republic. Julius Caesar now stood at the peak of power. But even at the height of his success, danger still surrounded him, and peace would not last long. Mark Antony struggled to maintain political order in Rome while hiding Caesar's prolonged absence from his Senate duties. Despite harsh criticism, Julius Caesar made no effort to conceal his relationship with Cleopatra. He chose to bring her to Rome, which many nobles saw as a deep insult to Roman tradition. Caesar later traveled east, where he faced King Pharnaces II. The campaign was swift and decisive. The victory was so rapid that Caesar famously declared, "I came, I saw, I conquered." As time passed, the relationship between Caesar and Cleopatra fueled growing suspicion among Roman elites. Rumors spread that Cleopatra had given birth to a son named Caesarion. Cleopatra claimed the child was Caesar's, but he never officially recognized him. Many senators feared Caesar intended to crown himself king and create a dynasty linking Rome and Egypt. Others already hated Caesar and searched constantly for reasons to oppose him. Some of these men were former allies of Pompey who had been pardoned by Caesar himself. During the festival of Lupercalia, Mark Antony attempted to place a golden diadem on Caesar's head. Though presented as a joke, it shocked the audience and reinforced fears that Caesar sought monarchy. Caesar removed the crown, but did little to calm opposition. He continued appointing friends and relatives to powerful offices and passed laws without Senate approval. His authority grew unchecked. Even then, Caesar planned a new campaign against the Parthian Empire. In 44 BC, the Senate named Julius Caesar dictator for life. At 55 years old, his ambition remained undiminished. Fear among his enemies hardened into conspiracy. The plot was led by Senator Gaius Cassius Longinus, who persuaded others to join. On March 15, 44 BC, Caesar entered the theater of Pompeii where the Senate was meeting. Mark Antony learned of the plot and rushed to warn him, but arrived too late. Caesar was warmly greeted by the senators, including Marcus Brutus, whom Caesar trusted deeply. A senator handed Caesar a petition as others gathered close, pretending to read. Suddenly, one seized Caesar's robe and drew a dagger. Shouts followed, and the conspirators attacked. Caesar was stabbed repeatedly, suffering more than 20 wounds. Marcus Brutus struck him among the last. Caesar collapsed at the foot of Pompey's statue. Seeing Brutus, he pulled his cloak over his face and fell silent. Ancient sources disagree on his final words. Some say he spoke none. After the assassination, senators fled in panic. The conspirators believed they had saved the Republic. They were wrong. The people of Rome loved Caesar. When news spread, crowds filled the streets in outrage. Caesar's body was cremated publicly, and mourners threw offerings onto the fire until it burned so fiercely that nearby buildings were damaged. The mob hunted the conspirators, forcing Brutus and Cassius to flee to Greece. Brutus later took his own life. Cleopatra and her son returned to Egypt shortly after. In the Forum, Mark Antony read Caesar's will, naming his grandnephew Gaius Octavius as heir and granting him the name Caesar. Octavius later became Augustus, the first Roman emperor. Future rulers adopted the name Caesar as a title of power. Julius Caesar was gone, but his name became eternal.